ideas. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. Let's build a mine. It's dungeon time. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Blackmagic Craft. As you may know, one of the rewards for my Patreon supporters at certain levels is that they get to choose a topic for a video. One of my most generous Patreon supporters, Hobie Hill, recently came up with his submission. And what he asked me to cover was a set of cavern mine tiles with tracks for carts and that sort of thing. And I thought, great, I haven't done anything yet with like rail lines in cave systems. That's really interesting and exciting. So I am developing that concept. But before I do that, I actually thought it was important that I first redefine the way I build and use tiles to represent cave systems and mines. The reason I wanted to do this is that I want whatever I do for tracks to be very modular and work off some kind of standard sizing so you can create all sorts of different things. And I have two sets of cavern or cave tiles that I use, and I didn't really think either of them would work that well for that. So if you're a longtime viewer, you may remember my first episode. And on that episode, I made these. They are out of 1-inch thick insulation foam. They're carved up really jaggedly to look like rock. They have heavy sand on them. And they were one of the first kind of things I developed for the channel. They're great. They look pretty cool when you put them on the table and play on them. They have the bonus of being able to be stacked and used for outdoor stuff like cliff faces. But a while ago, long after using these, I started to notice a lot of flaws with them. One being that as soon as I developed my 1/2-inch thick 3x3 tile standard, which I use and love, they didn't really integrate too well. If I wanted to have a room that went from, a stone floor to a natural cavern, the height difference didn't really work that great. And while these types of shapes were great for just dropping down and having quick rooms, I wasn't really happy with the way the shape of them and the carved edges made them not really join up in a nice way. And hallways were awkward, and I found them kind of limiting, and I sort of outgrew them. A while ago, I then built a new set that are fairly similar, but out of 1/2-inch thick foam so that they integrate nicely with my other tile systems. And I also decided to not do all of the jagged stonework and just keep the edge smooth so that pieces lined up a little bit nicer and didn't create these weird crevices. The other problem I had with these ones is that while this sand glued on top looked really cool, I didn't like how uneven it made the game surface. Sometimes when you're placing terrain on it, it would sit crooked or a mini wouldn't sit right. Also, no matter how much glue you use, eventually some of these stones kind of would break off and you'd have a weird pink dot on your tile. So when I did these ones, I just textured them with the tinfoil technique and painted them like stone, and these solved a lot of problems, and I've been fairly happy with them. But if I am going to be making some kind of modular rail system to use, these don't work. And the reason for that is if I decide that my rail system will be on, say, a 3-inch standard pieces, well, these are random sizes, so a standard rail set wouldn't end up working out no matter how you line these up. So I quickly realized that I needed to develop a new system that integrated all the stuff I liked about these ones, but kept some sort of standard. And that's how I came up with this. And I'm really happy about it. Now, this whole system is still in the early stages of development. I decided that I wanted to build a very big set all at once so that I didn't get left wanting more later, which means that my set is currently untextured and unpainted because I spent so far all my time developing the method and actually making about 100 or more individual tiles. So this episode is going to be a first part in an ongoing project. So I can't show you the totally finished results at this point, and you're going to have to just look at this proof of concept, and you'll be able to build along with me while I'm developing the next video. You can catch up by making your set of raw tiles. So how this set works is that it's based entirely on the same 3" by 3" square tiles of 1/2" foam. Exactly the same as any of my other dungeon tiles. What I've done is taken these squares and made 3 distinct pieces. You have center pieces that are part of larger rooms that are just a square. You have edge pieces that are plain square cuts on 3 sides, but have a wavy stone-like natural cut on one side. And then you have 90-degree corners. That's a right angle, 3" by 3" exactly, with a wavy cut. What this creates is a system that allows you to lay stuff out, make rooms, winding halls, and kind of anything you would want, but there is a grid work that is preserved so that you make a path on one side and a path on this side. They will reconnect in the end if that's what you want to do, because they are following this 3" repetitive grid. These 3 tiles are surprisingly versatile. With just those 3 shapes, you can make pretty much whatever you want. What I did realize is that the 90-degree corners are kind of the workhorse of the project, and you need a lot of these because these can create all sorts of interesting waves. I also did a few that are half corners and they're at a 45-degree cut to kind of offset stuff off. If you want to have a weird kind of bend, they do throw things off the grid a bit if you want to have them reconnect, but they're a nice option when you're just trying to do something a little bit more interesting. The other really nice thing is that I can drop in any of my other tiles within this layout and it won't screw up the layout further down the road. If I want to have a surprise like carved floor room within this cave system, I can. If I want to have a castle that transitions into cave, I can. It all integrates perfectly. The only issue with this is that you are then defined by 3" wide passageways. And for some DMs, that could be an issue where you want to have constricting, winding, narrow passageways, but if everything's just a 3" wide tile, how do you do that? I actually came up with 2 different methods. One that I think is best for me, and another option that may be best for other people, so I'm going to present both of them. One thing that you can do is make some narrower pieces that are still in a size that divides by 3. So these were cut out of 6" by 6" pieces, but they taper from 3" down to some narrow amount and then back to 3" again. So if you want to take out 2 straight pieces and a 90, you can drop this same piece, which is 6" by 6", and it will reconnect into the system perfectly, creating a narrow passageway. That's a perfectly fine way to do it, and you might like it, but I personally wanted all my tiles to stay no bigger than 3" in any direction so that they could stack and store neatly. So what I decided to do was take some of the offcuts from making these and just make a bunch of small pieces that are straight on one side with a wavy kind of design that I can place along edges as kind of low artificial walls to kind of disrupt and make the passageways more narrow or change. These pieces could also be stacked in layers to create different elevations within the dungeon. And all in all, I'm pretty happy with this system. I cut these pieces all up in one night about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't had a chance to texture them, base coat them, and paint them yet. That's next. But if you want to make a set like this, I am going to show you how you easily can make these individual pieces, and I will list how many of each I think you should probably make to have a nice serviceable amount of tiles. So that's the sales pitch, much longer than usual. There's not as much building in this video, but now let's go over to the hotwire table, and I'm going to show you the simple way that I make these various pieces. So to start, you are going to need to make a lot of these 3" by 3" square blanks. And I'm going to be carving all of these tiles on my Proxxon hotwire table because it is by far the most efficient and enjoyable way to do this. But like any of my foamwork projects, it can be done with a utility knife if that's all you have available. So the first thing we're going to do after making these perfect 3 by 3 squares is we're going to get rid of the rip fence and get it right out of the way. So for the side pieces, there's going to be a bunch of pieces where you're going to preserve this C shape of flat edges and just do a kind of wavy cut on one edge. Really simple, run it through, make a wavy cut. But the important thing is to preserve this 3 inches here. So I'm going to turn my hotwire table on, set the temperature somewhere around 3 or 4. And you don't want this to be set too hot so that it doesn't create too wide of a cut and remove some of this 3" material. And I'm going to come in from the side, trying not to cut off that corner, and I'm just going to make a wavy cut. And now I have one side cave wall. The really nice thing about using a hotwire table is that what you can do is you can actually stack 2 or 3 of these at once, get all the edges lined up, and cut all of them together, and it will triple your productivity. That is how I made my set. And that can be done for the sidewalls and the corners. So now for the corners, the principle is still the same. I want to create a radius here to make this a 90-degree turn, but I want to preserve my 3" grid. So when I come in on my cut, I'm going to make sure to stay just shy of each angle so that these 2 edges don't end up too short. Same thing, wavy cut, think like a rock, cut like a rock. Done. That's it. And if I had 3 of these stacked up, I would now have 3 pieces. Doesn't really get much easier than that, now does it? All right, so now that we're back at the table and I'm about to tell you how many of each of these pieces I think you should make, I realized that I'm a big dummy, and when I said there was 3 main types of tiles, it's actually 4. I don't know, I'm a little bit distracted. I forgot that while there is a bunch of pieces that are straight on 3 sides and have a wavy edge on one, obviously there's a bunch that have straight sides on 2 parallel sides and wavy on the 2 other parallel sides for hallways. Some of you have probably already made a comment before getting to this part of the video, realizing that I screwed that up. But anyway, there's 4 types of tiles. I'm not going back to the table to show you how to cut this one because it's pretty obvious. You have your 3 by 3 tile and you cut a wavy side on 2 parallel sides, making sure not to cut into the corners and make this smaller, keep this 3 inches. Now that that foible's out of the way, how many do you want to make? So for me, I have this game surface that's about 3 feet by 3 feet. So I don't really need any more than could be used in this space, but I also want to have options for doing different stuff. And as I was carving my batch, I kept making different layouts and then realizing where I was short and in need of more, and I cut more, and that's when I realized that the 90s are the most important. So for me, I made a batch of 100 tiles, and I made 40 of the right angle 90-degree corner pieces, and I made 20 of each of the other ones. 20 squares, 20 two-sided ones, and 20 one-sided ones. I also made 6 of these 45-degree ones, which again, I don't really need to show you how to make these. You make one of these and you cut it in half, but it's important that it's exactly in half. If you want to make some of these, it's up to you how many you want. And as far as just extra little random cutoffs, I just made, about a dozen random ones. The thing is, those are super easy to make, so you can make as much as you want. The problem is the more tiles you make, the bigger the process is going to be for painting. And I gotta say, as much as I love painting terrain and I love using Mod Podge, this is a lot to base coat. And it is at that point where I'm like, I wish I could just spray paint these black, but I am going to do these all in the base coat. And on the next episode, I'm gonna show you how to texture them and how to undertake prepping this many damn tiles at once. But you can start carving in the meantime. So that's it for this week. I'm sorry I don't have a finished product for you guys, but I think this will be better in the big picture. And if you want to buy any of the tools that I use in my builds, head over to blackmagiccraft.ca. There you can check out my Amazon affiliate store where I recommend all the stuff I use, and you help out the channel financially by making purchases. If you like this video, hit that like button, drop me a comment below. And of course, if you aren't already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to help this channel out, the best way you can do that is by supporting Blackmagic Craft on Patreon. That's also the way that you can get to decide cool topics like this. Can't wait to see you again next episode.